Welcome to this session on the future of plastics. My name is Laurie McLaren. I'm your moderator today. I am a senior policy advisor for the public affairs company BCW. Delighted to be here on this session. There's a lot of change in the world of plastics. I think you see that and you feel that when you walk into this conference. I think we see that in terms of, who would have thought a company like PepsiCo would make such a commitment in terms of recycled content as they've done, as many others have done as well. Who would have thought that some of the collaboration models, when you've got the end of the value chain, such as Veolia, the upstream, such as the Dows of this world, are working together and putting more than $1 billion into the Alliance for the Ending Plastics Waste. Economics are beginning to change. We're seeing the cost of recycled material like recycled PET changing and being maybe more competitive with virgin PET. And so I think there's a lot of movement. And we're moving into a new European Commission. We're moving into a new Horizon Europe R&D program in terms of research and innovation. So let's look ahead and let's look and try and unpick some of the, identify and unpick some of the challenges that plastics faces in order to really transition to play its full role as a material in the circular economy. And part of this transition is the number of change agents that are really helping this transition make place. And it's my honor to introduce you to our panel this afternoon. First of all, on far left, as you look, Andrea Bozic is head of the Education and Innovation Center at Saponia, which manufactures household products ranging from detergents to body care. And Andrea and team are involved in a DG research project, CircPack, which tries to make plastics packaging more circular and has aspects in terms of bio-based in that project. Then we have Mauricio Creeper in the middle. Mauricio, materials innovator is how he describes himself, and we'll hear a bit about that today. He is CEO of GR3N, which is a recycling company, which is bringing forward a chemical recycling technology which, and I quote, can potentially change how PET is recycled worldwide with a huge financial benefit for the recycling industry. Mauricio's vision is to eliminate the issue of plastic waste on a global basis. So maybe at the end of the commission, we don't need to have this discussion at all. In terms of our third speaker, Doreen Frederica is based in Brussels, is head of circular economy policy at ECOS, the European Citizens Organization for Standardization. And perhaps surprisingly, this is the only environment organization in the world dedicated to standardization. ECOS recently published a report, For Better, Not Worse, applying eco-design principles to plastics in the circular economy. Welcome the panel. So what we're going to ask the panel to do, and we're going to get you to respond as an audience, we're going to ask the panel to pitch an idea, a concept, a challenge that they would like to see discussed here in this room. And we need your input for that because you're going to vote after they speak for each of not more than 2 minutes, you will get a chance to vote on which of those you want to hear debated. So we're going to use the Slido app, and Slido, you may have been in previous sessions, but if you could open it up now, we're going to do a little test drive. So your smartphone, you connect it to the Wi-Fi, you open your web browser, you go to www.slido.com, and you enter the event code, if you haven't done it before, which is R900. And there you have a question of just basically which stakeholder group best describes you. And if you could answer that, I'll give you 20 or seconds or so to answer that, and we'll see whether we can get you all used to that, because this will be key in terms of how we take this forward. Any more? Okay. R900 is the code for the conference. You're not getting it work? Now it's working? That sounds good. That sounds good. Have we gone back to, Sylvia, have we gone back to 03?
Just taking notes.
Okay, 31. Oh, when it's at 31, right. Could we have the results of where we are now in terms of 34 respondees? 42, this is really good. So we are in Copernicus. Can we have the results for that? No? Okay. I propose, in the interest of time, that we move on. We hope that Slido will be... here we are. Okay, so academic research institution, 45%. No, they all adjust as the numbers go in. Thank you for the 60 respondees. So, I think we all got an idea on that, and it was a bit of a learning curve. And we're there. 193%, this is the new target for the Horizon Europe. Is it that right, Pavel? Okay, right, let's go. Okay, so I'm going to turn to Andrea to actually introduce the challenge she would like to take to discuss, debate today. So, if improving both the quality and quantity of post-consumer collection is key to plastics recycling success, what is needed to improve post-consumer collection systems? So why do you want to discuss this?
Well, in terms of manufacturers of plastics, currently most of them is using their manufacturing scrap already, almost 100%. Or they are separating their waste and selling it as secondary raw materials.
Okay.
So when it comes to production facility, we are pretty much covered. But the problem is what happens to the plastics that we put on the market? What happens after the consumer takes our bottle of fabric freshener and discards it into the garbage? Is it recycled or does it go to landfill? In many countries, systems are in place. Some are better, some are less good. So what we believe is that we have to teach the consumers what is happening to the plastics, to have better recycling of that plastics, because there is a limited supply of good quality recycled plastics, and we need that good quality to make recycled bottles. So if we are supposed to use more recycled material, we need source of that. And in that stream, there has to be connection from the consumer who discards it through the waste management companies back to the companies that are producing recycled material.
So you see as a critical issue, as a block at the moment, you're not getting the quality material back.
Yes.
And if we can solve that one, have some discussion if we can discuss that today, that would be helpful. Okay. Thank you very much, Andrea.
You're welcome.
Mauricio, what role for chemical recycling as part of the solution to ensuring high quality secondary plastics, and what needs to be done to make it more economically viable and also more climate and environment friendly?
Yeah. Chemical recycling is able to do upgrade of the polymer. It means that from a t-shirt you can produce a bottle and not just from a bottle to a t-shirt. But of course this process is much more complicated than mechanical recycling because it involves chemical processes. Then the cost might be higher in some cases. And of course we compete with virgin. But the industry of virgin polymers is industries there since 50 years. Then they take advantage of a scale factor. But being a small company, being small technology, we can't take advantage of small scale factor. Then, of course, we struggle with the cost of the polymer we can produce. This from the one side. And the other side, we have a problem, legislative problems, because what we produce are molecules, are chemicals, they come from waste. We are not officially recyclers. Then we would like to be recognized as a recycler, or at least to have a clear legislative framework to operate. At this moment, we don't have. It's quite the dark side.
Okay.
Those are the two challenges.
So within chemical recycling, you've got both that regulatory challenge and that cost challenge.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So Doreen, in terms of your challenge, how can we better work on use, targeting plastics use, and make the material have a low to no impact on the environment, and what role for eco-design in that space?
So I'm going to wait for the microphone to pick up on my voice. Here we go. And I'm going to do something that I hate doing, which is reading in front of people. So what I wanted to say was plastic has become such an overused material that its flexibility in design, so it can be hard, it can be soft, it can be really soft, as in a plastic film or a squeezy bottle, means that it's used and can be found everywhere. In our lives and in the environment. So like an iceberg, what we see on the surface, the fun colors, the lightweight, the easy to throw away or relatively cheap to buy, hides important environmental and human health impacts that are largely unaddressed by EU policy, legislation, standards, and even company policies. The 90% of that iceberg that we can't see is the environmental damage and human health impacts that come from plastics production, so the oil industry, and thousands of chemicals found in those plastics. So just for an example, in plastic packaging, it's been identified that you can have 4,000 chemicals in that packaging. And a study came out last week that showed that a number of different plastic packaging products ended up having hazardous substances in them that cause toxicity, cytotoxicity, that's toxicity for cells, estrogenicity, lots of different human health impacts. So what was once considered this miracle material has become a nightmare and needs to be given a different place in our lives. They need to be assessed for their ecological and social impacts, that is, materials should be. And products need to be designed to have low impacts. So there are many ways that we can do this. Replacing plastic with less damaging materials. Limiting the number of plastics in a product. Designing and marketing products for longer use, including through using functional products for longer periods of time. Repairability, upgradability, reuse, and eventually recycling.
So that's the roles of eco-design.
That's it for me. So using less of the unsustainable fossil fuel-based material and eco-designing products. So problems are designed out from the start, and products are designed to make people think about their use.
Thank you. Okay, can we turn to your Slido, and can we turn to the questions of which of those three you would like to hear more about for a debate on stage? The excitement is palpitating. Do you think you don't have the three options there? Then we need to do this by a okay. Well, can we have an active poll by raising your hand? So if you'd like to hear more about the challenge that there is in terms of getting that post-consumer plastics packaging back, how do we do that? How do we convince the consumer? How do we go into that area and really enable them to happen? This was what Andrea was talking about. Can I have a show of hands for that? And Janneke, can you be sort of second in terms of that? It's working. All right? All things happen eventually. Thank you for your faith, audience. Do we have the three? Oh my goodness me. Hands? Right. We've not got much time here. We all want to discuss the future of plastics. Focus on me, don't focus on Slido, okay? I know that's difficult. Can we have a show of hands? Post-consumer plastics, getting it back from the consumer. Can I have a show of hands? Who would like to hear more about that? Okay, Janneke, are you keeping an eye? Okay, thank you very much. And then we've got chemical recycling, vision to the future, good challenge. How do we want to have discussion with that? Slightly more on chemical recycling. Janneke, you're right. You agree with me? And then eco-design, all those 4,000 chemical substances and the like. Ooh, it's very close. Oh, it's no longer close. All right, I think we're on to eco-design. So thank you very much, everybody, for participating on that. We're all going to discuss eco-design because it matters to all of us. So it's not just the burden on you, Doreen. But in terms of eco-design, what are we talking about here? How can we take initiatives to do this fundamental change? It's at the start. It's in the universities. It's in the innovation labs. It's in the industry. Where do we go to unclick this and start to make this happen differently?
So you're asking me specifically? Okay,
Yep.
so I work for an environmental organization. And so for me, as someone living and working in Europe, I look to the European Commission to be telling...
Top down.
Yes, because that means level playing field. That means the same rules. You can go as far as you want beyond them, but what I want is to know that we want a certain type of product, series of products, sustainable, have to be defined, but what I want is the clear market signal from the European Commission to say, you, innovators, manufacturers, you have to be heading in this direction because we're dealing with societal challenges. They're still there with us, even after 40 years of environmental policy. We need to change the way we produce, what we produce, why we produce it, and how it's sold and consumed by people. We have to do this. That is the underlying thing, and we were talking earlier, the finances that go with it. So I want to know what a circular economy looks like financially.
Mm-hmm.
And I want all of the cards lined up. I want the innovation, research and innovation, to be pushing for eco-design because we can't keep closing the loop at the end once the damage has been done.
Okay, I see you, Mauricio, nodding. You're at the end of the loop in terms of recycling, or the start of the next loop. To what extent are you sort of seeing that actually the design phase is critical?
Yeah, of course. We are part of the chain. Eco-design starts the material. They use the material to produce something. We recycle. Then if we work together, we can create something with the same function according to the good practice in terms of environment and easy to recycle. And then it's beneficial for the entire value chain. There is no silver bullet. There is no division. We have to work all together. Many times we are asked, what's the silver bullet to solve the problem of plastics? There is no silver bullet. We have plenty of problems. Then everybody has his little role in order to go in the same direction to solve the problem.
What I understand from you, Doreen, is that you're looking to one actor, the European Commission, to make that happen, as opposed to this chain. Do you not risk sort of designing, for just imagine that a member state committee or the Commission come out with a design and they say, we want this recycled content for a bottle. If it doesn't meet Andrea's requirements, that means after 3 months you squeeze it and it breaks, the consumer's not going to be happy, your members are not going to be happy. How do we bring in innovation that makes sense on the ground without too much sort of being designed in Brussels?
Yeah, so for me, it's not that I'm looking at one actor, that is the European Commission. What I'm asking for is that there's a clear frame around which we're all operating, let's say, so that it's very clear where the European Commission, where Europe wants to go in terms of reducing our resource use, reducing pollution, using less energy, having zero to very low fossil fuel base. It's those kinds of societal challenges. Exactly, the rules of the game. You can go as far as you want with it, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of your innovation. But as long as what you're doing is eco-designing, as in not just designing something to shift product or to make a profit. Of course, that's what companies are there for. But they're not only. It's not just to make a profit. It is also to have that corporate culture that says we're not here to damage the planet because we don't care, profits over planet. It's actually both
And you see companies doing that?
So I see companies doing that who come to us often and say, how can I get the European Union to promote my product? Not because I want to be better than my competitors, but because I'm better performing than them. I don't have this in my product. I don't have that. We're respecting whatever, natural laws, let's say. And there is no way to do that except through legislation.
Maybe turning to you, Andrea. You're a company trying to put some of your products in the market. I've got a really eco-conscious brand to them. What are the barriers that you're feeling that in terms of recognition that you need some regulatory framework that helps you in that respect?
Well, in a way, on one side, there is not only regulation, but also consumers. Because when we tested the consumers with a recycled bottle and the virgin bottle, recycled bottle is gray. It doesn't look good. Virgin material is shiny, nice, and everybody grabbed the shiny bottle. Mm-hmm. So we have to change the mind of the consumer, for the consumer to think that, okay, this isn't so nice, but it's better for the environment. On the other side, we are trying to introduce more bio-based materials into the circle, but it's still something under the development. We were trying the bottles, didn't go so well, but on the other hand, multi-material packaging based on paper and bio-based plastics was great. But the price is still a little bit too high to go on the market, mass market. We can use it for premium products. So that's the problem also, the price of the new materials that are environmentally friendlier. Right. But also the framework when it comes to regulatory is that all the producers are equal when it comes to putting the plastic waste on the market. The producer that is trying to use more recycled content or bio-based content is same to the one that does nothing. We are paying the same price to the state because we are producing waste. We are putting plastics on the market. There is no difference between us. So we need a better framework when it comes to
right. You've got free riders in there,
yes.
And you need to have a level playing field coming in, which is a little bit. Do you recognize that, Doreen? You're talking about a level playing field and coming together, the key objectives, etc. What do you see in terms of coming up? Is the Commission? What should the Commission do to make that happen? Give me an example.
A level playing field in the economics of things. So this is something that's been discussed for many years, is the whole extended producer responsibility approach. So this is what is happening in a number of different products. Just to be very short, let's say for packaging, if I as a company put X number of tons of packaging on the market through selling my products, then I have to pay a certain amount of money to the state, and that helps to fund the recycling collection. Okay, as Andrea says, it doesn't matter what you're producing, you're just doing a tonnage based according to the materials. Right. So modulating the fees is what it's called. So we can do that, plus we can go even beyond that, because it still gets you to think about, what happens to the materials that are used in my products, in the packaging of my products, rather than actually, I'm going to be paying more if I'm not thinking about putting better performing ecologically products on the market. Right. And so if I pay less because I'm thinking about the design and the packaging of that product, then that starts to build that virtuous loop. Yeah?
So the economics has got to work.
The modulation, absolutely.
To bring the consumer in, but also to bring the other producers in as well. Mauricio.
I need to be rewarded if I make an effort. And as a company making profits, I can receive money, I can make more money, or I pay less taxes, for example, if I put virgin, or if I don't put virgin.
Right.
That's the point.
So you need to have these signals that are going to,
in my opinion, yes.
Give you investment.
Yeah, because the companies are ready. They want to do something. Right. They want. The brands, they want to do it. But if they do and it's not recognized, why they have to do it if their competitor don't care?
Okay. All right.
Already in the design of the bottles and some other packaging materials, we are trying to use less material. So, for instance, in our closures for the fabric softener, it's 2 grams less than it was year before, because we changed the design to keep the material properties but to use less plastic. So most of the producers are doing that. They're trying to use less material, but it doesn't make any difference when it comes to paying to the state for the amount of the...
So it doesn't seem to add up. Is there
Yes.
certain things are being done at the one stage, but actually not reflected in the pricing? And so we need to bring it all together to make it more coherent. So what's needed in terms of innovation, in terms of eco-design? What do you see as the next kind of breakthrough that you need? Doreen?
Yeah, so we're talking about plastics today. So what I would really like is that we use fewer plastics. So we use less, as in we reduce the tonnages that are being used. Light weighting, as it's called, so losing the grams here and there, is something that we've been doing for decades, that we will continue to do. But we saw with the packaging directive, because we focus on weight, there is so much shift towards plastic that we've ended up with plastic everywhere.
Why do we need to reduce the number of plastics? Because, in some respects, different polymers have different performances, they have different innovations.
Absolutely.
So you can see how we got into this.
How much plastic? What types of plastics do we recycle? We recycle PET, we recycle LDPE, HDPE if we're lucky. Exactly. So
Mauricio, from a recycler's perspective, is that aligned with you? You're getting far too many different polymers, or do you think that the next generation of recycling will be able to cope with all the different polymers?
Different polymers means different applications. And then if we have to do something, we need this kind of polymer, not the other one. The problem is that we collect, sort, and recycle just packaging. We don't collect other rigid. A toy is not recycled. There is no possibility to give to the facility and being recycled. Why? Many reasons. But in my opinion, not because I want to promote plastics, but of course plastic has a function. Packaging is the need to preserve food. We can't waste food. And if we don't pack food, we waste food. You can see the statistics. In the country there is no development of packaging. They throw away 40% of food from the production to the consumer. In West countries, we throw away after consumer. The consumer throw away what they buy. But this is it's a matter of behavior. It's not a matter of packaging. The value chain is very good on saving food. If we want to use glass or ceramics to store the food, this has a higher impact because the transportation, you transport a heavy container. So the history of world was characterized of humanity by find the right packaging to put stuff. Okay. Imagine bottle of wines and so on. Then plastic is the use of plastic and the management of plastics post-consumer for me is the big problem.
The smart use you're looking for.
Yeah, the plastic they don't have right. Legs and they go to the ocean by themselves. Someone throw in.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm going to close that debate. I think you can see some crossover in terms of the different speakers in terms of how they see that. It's clear that eco-design is going to be important. John, could you give us the perspective of DG Research and Innovation in terms of where we're going with the strategic initiative coming up in terms of the action plan? How is the Commission, Doreen said, can the Commission provide the guidance? How is the Commission planning to provide that guidance under the new Commission coming into force in November?
So thanks a million. Do you want me to sit down or talk into this?
Whatever you're happy with. Is that working?
Like you, I prefer not to read things. European officials normally somebody who talks and everybody else is asleep, so I'll try not to change that. It's been very interesting. I was downstairs with the people talking about the major shifts in climate and sustainability. And one of the interesting things, John Schillenhuber, who's the father of the IPCC and decarbonisation, was talking about was design and building our way out of where we are. He was talking about wood actually in forestry and design, but there's a big opportunity here. The issue, I guess, the stage that we're at is at one level, the European Union is a regulatory superpower, but the superpowers of the European Union are actually about consensus and working with different organisations and across sectors and the three parts of sustainability. And I think we're at a particular moment in this movement into the von der Leyen Commission when all of the issues we've been talking about here are now going to be looked at in terms of an ambitious forward-looking plan. And we would expect in the middle of November to see whatever this Green Deal communication is going to set out the next level of ambition on the circular economy, on issues such as natural resources and biodiversity. And I think in that context we will be able to answer more definitively your question, Laurie. There's no doubt that if you want to make a difference, if you want to make the difference they say between optimism and hope is a plan. And I think one of the things that my colleagues have been looking at for some time with you is we need to set out a new systems approach to this. We can't pick out individual issues and work out solutions one by one. I think somebody was there suggesting there's no silver bullet, but there's certainly not a single-use solution that we can talk about in this context. And what we need is a new agenda. So my colleagues are working together with you to develop a strategic research and innovation agenda, which can try and frame both the challenges that are there, the directions that need to be taken, and the destinations that can be developed. It's a kind of a navigation. You were talking about the different kind of ways of navigating from the different kind of concentric circles that you're operating in. You're operating actually in different parts of our sustainable society and economy. We have to address the whole value chain of plastics. We have to look at the risk-hazard trade-off, which is becoming increasingly clear. The single most difficult thing, I think, for those of us who are interacting with the economic and political and social space is how do we internalise the externalities in the next few years? How do you actually set prices? How do you set the signals you were talking about in the right way? Who should be doing it? What is the European Union's role and what is the role of member states, operators and regions and cities and so forth? And I think this is going to be a very important aspect. Design will be central to all of this, and eco-design. We can't keep moving from one set of patched up solutions to the next. So at what point then do we have a consensus? Can we convene the different actors around a predictable direction, I think is what you were talking about. And I think this is where research and innovation will slightly change in its character. You've seen that our organisation, the Research and Innovation Department of the Commission, has been reorganised. And it's been reorganised to actually set direction, to use research and innovation to set direction for the different actors. The people who are investing, the people who are innovating, the people who are concerned about the toxicity or the risks, the people who are trying to make this post-waste economy work in a practical way. So that's where research and innovation has to be structured in a way that it will try and address these in a structured way. And that will include, of course, aspects of remediation technologies and the other aspects that are needed. So there's so many different aspects that need to be put here, but this is what we will do together, is to try collectively to build this strategic research and innovation agenda on plastics, which is one of the things that needs to be done following on from the Circular Economy Action Plan Generation 1 and Generation 2. We need to look about how Horizon Europe can actually identify the right kind of pathways, the right barriers, the right incentive systems. Maybe there's new metrics, maybe there are different ways of underpinning some of these changes. To look at a significant shift in how plastics are part of our economy and how they interact with our society and our ecology. I think the issue is to how you can actually successfully have price and other signals in the economy that are predictable. As we've seen in other sectors, the worst thing you can do is to have one set of incentives and signals and then 5 years later you have another. So we need to convene, I think, along a medium-term approach, and research and innovation can also convene people at a long term across policies and considerations, and then that can be tried and tested, demonstrated and deployed, and it can inform generations of regulation and other policies. There need to be new business models, they need to be tried out. I think we need to try out things. I think research and innovation in particular needs to demonstrate and deploy, and sometimes things at scale, sometimes things in a place-based way, in new ways that we haven't done before. The research community has been very, very good at generating new knowledge, and I think given the urgency of the transition of the next 10 years, we have to move beyond that. We actually have to start demonstrating what is possible. Public policy, you've mentioned procurement. You've mentioned procurement. You know, at some point we need to make a decision about this in the European Union. You know, I've been working with trying to get the sustainable bio-based industries as part of a sustainable bioeconomy. But a lot of the investment shift, you can get money for a new app in digital over a coffee table in Lisbon, you know, 20 million, no problem. But come to somebody and say, here's a really complex, chemically based set of processes, you know, which are going to do all kinds of different things and will rejuvenate industries and impact on the environment and allow upcycling, and people look at you as if you've got two heads. So we have to think about what is backing this public direction, what kind of issues like public procurement, like pricing and so forth, can be looked at different levels. And the technology we've mentioned, new materials are going to be an extremely important part of this. Where are we heading in that regard? In terms of, you know, CO2 going to be a raw material? What does bio-based mean in 5 or 10 years' time? There needs to be a consensus so that we can operate clearly in there. And then we need to use the power of digital AI and robotics to make it possible. In the end, and this is the other conclusion from the other meeting, we're not talking about evolution anymore. I think that's one of the problems that we have. We're talking about system shifts, we're talking about revolution, and we've made bad decisions before. So this decision has to be right, and it will not be decided by people like me. It has to involve society and economic actors and people involved in the environment, and people who are trying to make the lives of consumers. If you live here in Brussels, it's not always terribly easy to function in the way that you want. So this has got to be part of the debate, and that's what we're here for this week, is to hear what you think about that, right, and what questions we should be asking, who should be involved, and how do we try and test these things out. So, John, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to, if you'd like to join us on the platform, and we're going to, you know, points from our other speakers. I'm going to ask a question, but if you have a question for John, please raise your hand. I've got one over there. And we'll come back and then we'll have a brief discussion for 5 minutes before we go into Challenge 2 debate. John, you mentioned about... Here is better. Challenge 2, I think I'm going to fall off, that's true. The Challenge 2 debate is going to happen, but one of the things is how do you drive this in terms of new models of collaboration? I just wondered, in your experience of the bio-based industries joint undertaking, is there lessons to be learned there in terms of how we do this for all plastics and the circular economy?
I give one very concrete example. I'm very strongly in favour of the power of demonstration, and I don't just mean the extinction protest demonstration. When I started off in a previous job on the bioeconomy, I was kind of asking myself, is this a thing? You know, is it just a series of technologies and research people talking about something? And when we set out in the bio-based industries joint undertaking, one of the things we decided was we would do flagships at the beginning because there's a problem in bankability for people going to get funding and financing, because there's an issue of governance, that we would try and do a number of big flagships where we thought that the breakthrough, not just the technologies and the markets, could be opened up. And we visited with a number of commissioners a place in Sardinia, which was the place was basically, it's like something from a Bertolucci's set from the 60s. Every industrial policy mistake you could make concentrated in one place and over-invested in. And what they had done is they had taken an old oil refinery, and they're taking a technology that allows them to use a weed, basically thistle, and the soil it's been grown in cannot be used for any productive purpose, and the farmers are being given money to do some kind of nonsense crop that doesn't have any purpose. So on the one hand, they have a technology that can turn this thistle into initially bio-based plastics, so taking fossil then out of the economy. This is a good thing in itself. And then with experimentation, they could see it could be used for cosmetics. It could be used for low temperature lubricants for aviation and so forth. But what was significant, in fact, was the socioeconomic model that happened. The farmers had a regular supply of income at a higher level. They were doing something constructive. There was different forms of innovation necessary to make it work. The industry was cleaning up. They were creating an export and so forth. This is just one example that you have similar things. So the power of demonstration, I think when we talk about some of these things, okay, you can't play with the environment in terms of demonstration. But when we're talking about processes and signals, I think one of the things we can try and do is maybe have some transition, you know, super demonstrators in different places to see, can it work? And consumers are also part of that. One of the issues about demand, response, and consumer behavior, you know, if you're trying to release a specific product or service, you're very much at the mercy of where you are. You probably don't have the resources of the big companies or the big actors. Is it possible for people to be given the space to try out different ways of doing things?
So there's economic incentives for everybody in that model, and it came together in a collaborative way.
Yes.
And it wouldn't happen without.
And it was invested in partnership by the public sector, setting direction,
Right.
and taking risks that other people won't take.
Because we see some collaborative models like the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, which are, I believe, largely private sector, but this public-private model might be something we need to look into. We had a question over here. Could you say your name and your organization? Yeah. You could come to the stage. If you're
Open this microphone.
Thank you. My name is Camille Épinay. I'm working for the Brussels Agency for Business Support, posed as NCP and EEN. I'm working with the cluster Circle Made Brussels, cluster on circular economy, and I'd like to, actually it's a bridge between what Doreen was saying on eco-design and what Mr. Bell was saying about providing the incentive. And I'd like to share with you a suggestion from one of my colleagues from the cluster was saying, but what about putting as a criteria, or at least a question in the form for the EIC accelerator, what about the design of your inventions in terms of circular economy? Because actually it covers all. It's a transversal topics, and I could even bring it further, is what about making circular economy cross-cutting topics in Horizon Europe, like gender is at the moment, for instance.
John, would you want to address that?
No, please.
Or- yeah.
So number one, ask these questions and write them down on Slido this week, because everything you write and ask will be read in terms of the strategic planning of Horizon Europe, which is the purpose of the event. I was at an event with Vice President Katainen in Finland just before the summer, and he said, the two major trends are circularization, digitalization of the economy, and this is what the European Union has to do. So this is what we have to do. How you achieve it, I'm not sure if creating conditionalities in the work program is a way of doing it, but I certainly think in terms of the shift to life cycle analysis and circularity, it's something that we need to start hardwiring into evaluation in the right kind of places. And the EIC, I think, is going to come under a lot of scrutiny in terms of, does it set the kind of direction that is necessary in terms of the urgency that we have to find innovation in these spaces. So I'm not going to give a committal answer, but I'm very interested in the suggestions, as I think my colleagues are. I'm sure Pavel would have some very interesting thoughts on how much money should actually go into these topics and calls, and not just the nature. But it's the direction we have to go in.
Okay. Right. Any other questions from the audience at this stage? We were going to go into other challenges, and I just wanted to get an indication in terms of the audience. So I'm going to. It's going to be tricky without Slido, I think, isn't it? But we were looking to see what other debate we could get into here, and one of the aspects is, I just want to go down it, is we could talk about biodegradability. What role for biodegradable plastics? Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Which of the following challenges would you like to discuss? So the first one, we want you to vote, and we're going to cross fingers in terms of hoping that Slido works. The top one is really what Andrea was explaining about post-consumer. We can still discuss about that. The second one was Doreen's challenge. So we've discussed that. We're going to, but if you would like that, you think that's important, select it, and we can always note that this audience views it as important. Chemical recycling is Mauricio explaining as a critical, maybe game changer in the discussion. I know that there's people on the platform who'd love to debate that. Then we have, can we move on to the next one, or is this? Sorry?
We can see it on the phone.
Okay, so I believe on the phone you can see the other ones, which is, what's the role for biodegradable plastics in a circular economy? In view of the fact that some plastics will end up as littering and environmental pollution, are they an insurance policy, or are they a distraction, putting us off real recycling? when dealing with resource scarcity, what should the role of bio-based plastics be versus fossil-based and secondary materials? Should manufacturers be obliged, I presume by regulation, to use recycled and bio-based plastics in the production process in order to reduce the use of our virgin fossil materials? And if so, how should they do it? We had the eco-design discussion here. We had one previously, and then the now is how can relevant actors work better together to achieve circularity towards good quality secondary plastic? What incentives need to be put in place to prevent downcycling? So do you have a chance on your Slido to vote on those? If you can, please take the next 30 seconds to do so. So you're voting on one, you'd like to see our second debate. If I can't see it there, how am I going to know the results? Yeah, thank you, Janneke.
Did you?
It's going to take some time. John, can I actually ask you another question on bio-based in terms of single-use plastics directive has been one of the drivers in terms of change in terms of plastics. It's just perhaps the start. It was very much focused. Was there, when you were dealing with starting with bio-based back in 2014, in terms of this joint undertaking, circular economy wasn't really the buzzword at that time. Do you think bio-based has been really integrated into our plastics policy, or needs better integration? Because I think in the single-use plastics directive, it didn't really come up very much.
Well, I think it needs better integration. I think because of the problem with the circular economy shift is such a fundamental systemic shift for people, is that there's a confusion between the form and the content sometimes. You know, the fact that there is an organic and an inorganic part of the circular economy distracted people from some period of time. It is a fundamental shift in the way in which we consume and use and function as a society.
Right.
And I think that distracted people away slightly from, you know, these two parts of the same world. What was going on in the bio-based industries, and when we were revising the bioeconomy strategy in the last year, where the shift was to sustainability and circularity, just has to be hardwired into what we're doing. In the bio-based industries joint undertaking, it really started with plastics and bio-based plastics and chemicals. So there was a much greater awareness inside the partnerships between researchers and industry and regions than perhaps there was at the level of policy at the beginning.
Right.
But in any case, it goes without saying there needs to be a much deeper integration across the circular economy policy and bio-based policy. But the new bioeconomy strategy, which was published last year, it's hardwired into that, and the actions that follow from that will make sure that integration takes place, and particularly on the ground.
Did you want to comment there?
So yeah, I just wanted to talk about bio-based a bit, because in our view, and we're involved in the bio-based discussions, and also through a Horizon 2020 project looking at sustainability of bio-based products, which is the issue that outside of the bubble, let's say, or if from first look, of course, bio-based always automatically looks better sustainability-wise, because it's not fossil-based. But this whole issue of the indirect land use change, and the needing to... My perception is that the approach that's still being taken at EU level is to promote bio-based products before there's actually the understanding of what are the limits that we can have in terms of the use, that shift to bio-based, and therefore where are the more significant uses to come. And that's where I don't feel comfortable, because I think what will happen is everybody jumps on the bio-based is better, and so we go towards bio-based plastics without actually thinking about those significant effects, if we're talking about biodiversity emergency as well. And that's what I would like to see a bit more from the European Union, is something that's a bit more guided to say, hang on a second, because it's not automatically sustainable, but... Okay.
So, and the good news is that you voted for bio-based as being the discussion, and we're discussing it already. So, to what extent should we be obliging manufacturers to have recycled content and bio-based content in their products? So, bear that in mind. There was really a response to John, and now I'm coming back to Mauricio. John, do you want to respond to that, or?
Yeah, no, I think it's just to give you a very clear example. marine biodegradability. Okay. If you really want us to have a really sharp focus on how are we framing our questions, you know, is the issue about the biodegradability of even bio-based plastics in the marine environment? Is that the question? Is that what we should be doing in the marine environment? So the framing of the question is the process that we're all going through. And actually, our colleagues here and I, when we were building this new unit, one of the most difficult things in terms of getting this fit about the circular economy and plastics and bio-based and environmental planetary boundaries and so forth, is how to frame the questions correctly. When we were worried about defossilizing plastics, fantastic, you push at every level. So this is why the bioeconomy strategy has become about a sustainable bioeconomy. It's the first policy strategy, I think, in the last few years that has one of its pillars is about biodiversity. Right. So there are planetary boundaries. We need to understand what they are. And in function of that, you develop whichever are the value chains or the systems in the right way. But we need more knowledge, we need standards, we need life cycle analysis. I mean, that's part of where we're at. And then you can frame it in terms of should investors be pulling in this direction or in that direction. So it's absolutely...
We need to form the decision-making process.
Yeah.
Okay. Mauricio?
Yeah, but how much oil is used to produce plastics?
4%.
4% of oil is used for plastics. It's not so much. 96% is used for fuel, for our cars. Second point, who wants a food container which is biodegradable and biodegrade with the food inside? I don't know if it's good. You do? I don't so much.
It's cardboard.
Oh, yeah, but it depends on the function, how long we want to keep the stuff. The point is, bio-based, one direction on bio-based. No, let's think about it. I want a toy bio-based plastics. Fine. Toy for my kids on bio-based plastic? I love it. But good luck to blow mold a bottle with the bio-based plastics. It's not easy. On PF, yes, but in other polymers, PHAs, it's a nightmare. I'm talking about acronyms, just different polymers, just to give you an idea about how complicated it is, technically speaking. That's the point. We have not to forget that technicality is always there. So, more science.
Andrea, what would happen if your company, there was a European Union directive saying you had to make 50% of your packaging had to be either bio-based or recycled content? Is that something that would be...
Panic.
Panic?
And I think in most European companies, same. If it's something that we have to do in a short period of time. We are trying to use recycled PET in our products, but we discussed, I showed the bottle before. There is difference in color, difference in material itself, properties of the material. So as long as we don't have a good quality recycled materials, we can't produce the plastic bottles or containers or whatever that will do the function same as virgin PET is doing at the moment. We are working with bio-based plastics. We tried to make the bottles. We discussed this before. And it wasn't that good. It simply doesn't work with certain type of materials. At this point, it's still work in progress. But on the other hand, as I mentioned before, multi-material packaging, we did the cardboard box for the powder detergent with bio-based material inside, and it was fantastic. It is fantastic.
Fantastic in terms of property.
Of property, yes. Exactly like the fossil material. It has the good barrier properties, and the material is recycled as paper. So far, if you have a cardboard box with barrier properties, it cannot be recycled. It doesn't matter if that barrier is wax or some kind of foil, unless it's something that is peeled off, that cardboard cannot be recycled. And this kind of material is recycled like a paper. So this is one way to go forward.
So you wanted to meet the recycling performance, and that product does. But that's an exception.
Yes,
at the moment.
yes, but exactly, exception. And at this point, it's also an expensive product.
Of course, it's a voluntary action from your company.
Yes.
voluntary.
Yes.
You want to have
Voluntary.
a reward.
Yes.
No. But I think somebody has to start somewhere, and you need to actually have these pathways to actually make that happen. And what I sense is that there is some skepticism, John, in terms of biobase, but some willingness to say, if we're going to step back and ask the right questions and really circularize this, then that might be different.
Yeah, if I can just say on that, it's a bit like the discussion about the energy mix 10 years ago. It's about getting the mix in the circular economy right, and that will evolve.
Right.
Your point about the technological barrier is very important, and the cost and the understanding of the externalities, and that's something which is evolving. So it's nobody's thinking the biobased is the only solution to everything. It's part of the solution. It's a very important part of the solution, but we need to, it's a bit like the energy mix discussion. We started off saying biofuels were the answer to everything. You need a different mix of policies, but the biobase is an area which has not been developed, and it's technologically difficult, it's expensive,
Of course.
and there's some very, very large industries that need to evolve, and that's why the focus is there.
And if we never start to do this, we never arrive to the end.
Yes.
Yes, that's
And
right.
that the legislator, the European Commission, gave a lot of money to develop research and activities regarding biobased.
Right.
We have to recognize without this, we will never be here now talking
Exactly.
about it.
Okay.
That's for sure.
So different models, needing for getting the pricing right, needing to bring design and the full life cycle of the circularity of the product together with new collaboration. John, can we have the final words from you in terms of how is this going to be taken forward? You've got your research initiative coming up in terms of the innovation agenda. You have a new commission. What have you heard today that you need to take forward, and how can this audience engage with the commission in helping you take the next steps?
Well, I found the conversation, what I like is the honesty in the conversation, which I think is very important at this point. We have to set new directions in the European Union. The European Union, will, for example, be the first climate neutral continent in the European Union. There's all kinds of consequences to that. And these are things, our superpowers, if you like, are not about having big blonde hair and nuclear weapons. They're about the fact that we can actually engage the diversity that we have, use our intellectual capacity and our market capacity, and actually shape the future in the way that we want. But it means that now we need a serious convening around what are the directions, what are the parameters, to go back to how do we frame the questions that will allow us to set the direction. To use the marine biodegradability, is it small or large? We know the direction. I think the question for us here is how do you want research and innovation to support the different directions? Do we continue with 1,000 puppies growing, right, or do we have a bit of a structure into it, which is what we're talking about, having a strategic research innovation agenda, saying, look, we know there are these pathways, we know there are these issues, we know there are these trade-offs and questions, there are costs, there are technological issues, there are social issues, and most of all there are going to be issues of governance, because one of the issues we're going to have to decide on, and maybe we can try this out, we have these things called missions in Horizon Europe, where we can do some place-based demonstration and deployment, and to see how the public would actually make decisions based on very real choices. So I think what you're doing here today and this next couple of days, and in feeding back to the strategic planning process, be as clear as you want, because I think people are listening, and we'll have a strategic plan at the end of the year. That's basically a navigation tool for the work programs, but you will see there be a lot more outreach with different kinds of partners, public, private, all creatures great and small. So engage, and I think you'll find there's a listening environment. It's a very complex thing, but hell, we like complexity in Europe. That's what we're good at.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the panel very much for a lively debate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.